Greetings everyone, welcome to this new class. Let's give a chance for everyone to connect and cultivate a proper attitude. Simple class today, but long, potentially boring. We start with the attitude of wanting to be honest with ourselves. When we practice Visantara, we ask ourselves a question, but it's a rhetorical question. Last time I got angry, did I choose it? The answer is obviously no. We just ask a rhetorical question to see if we can actually just be honest with ourselves. We can just take an affirmation. I just want to remember, last time I got angry, I didn't choose it. When I have a big wave of disappointment, I don't choose it. Okay. So for today's class, we're not going to use the typical rhetorical question. We're just going to use affirmations, statements about it. I want to be honest with myself. If I want to stay functional and harmonious in life, I have to be just direct and honest with myself. So I'll tell myself simple facts. Last time I got angry, I didn't choose it. When I get disappointed, I don't choose it. Good. Pay attention inside. We allow ourselves to feel that honesty. Okay? A question was asked in private by messenger by a student advanced enough that I actually would read myself. Sorry for filtering out most of you, but it's my reality. I have a schedule, games to play, actually work to do. Yeah, like anyone else. The question was, can you tell us about the COVID situation? The fear that is rising and the conflicts between the facts that we hear about the current situation and all the theories, which are mostly conspiracy theories, and fear is rising. To answer this, I will simply say no. I won't answer that question. But it inspired me to teach about why that situation becomes a conflict for us. Why the fear? I'm not going to tell you my opinion about it all, but I'm gonna encourage you to focus on why does it become a fear. Why does a situation like this become a conflict inside? So many masks are awakened. So many potentials are troubled. We'll take one thing at a time. Okay. First, to live in the present moment does not mean not to care for the future. In another class, I will teach that the future is just, it will be a moment now, eventually. And you want that future now to also be happy. So planning ahead is good. However, living now means living now. Okay? What are the current facts? Do you eat? Do you have shelter? Do you sleep well or not? Do you sleep? Can you sleep? The grocery stores, are they still filled with what you need? If your basic necessities are covered, that means that your fear is in your mind and not in facts. You are not threatened. Okay. Whenever a drama happens, it could be the conflicts that come from the COVID isolation. It could be what your ex said to the parents of your new partner, for example. Okay, trying to find a complicated situation here. It could be what the co-workers are planning in your back so you might not get the promotion. No, it could be anything. When our life is not threatened, but our emotional stability is threatened, we freak out. So COVID or life drama or situation at work, observe what your mind does. We lose focus of the current situation. I eat, I can sleep, I have shelter. And we get stuck in interpretation, in plans. The first clue I will give you is the more complicated the scenarios you imagine or interpret, possibly you're just projecting what you would do in the same situation. How complicated you are as a person. The complications you have inside is what you project on the world. But we don't know the truth, and it's so complicated. You're talking about you. The complications are inside you. Focus on the feeling. There's a fear. Just focus on it. A fear about, like I said, could be the COVID conflict. We don't know what's real. Could be life drama. Could be gossip. The more complicated you are, the more lost in your mind you will be. Take this as a clue about your own lack of simplicity inside. Now, to be simple does not mean to become stupid and unable to think clearly. If a situation is complicated in facts, you can calmly look at it like a puzzle and resolve it. But be honest. You are not calm looking at your life's puzzle or the COVID situation. Well, some of you are, just some of you are not. I'm talking about that topic. The emotional wave that rises when a puzzle scenario happens around you. That's what you have to get in touch with. Is the scenario making you lose contact with the truth now? Is that scenario simple or complicated outside? Is it making you lose your sense of security? Well, live now. Plan a happy future, but live now. Fear like this, it comes from the mask of control. The problem is not how complicated the situation is. With COVID or life drama or anything, it's not about how potentially complex it is. It's about the fact that we're not in charge. We disagree because for a while, we felt that we were the ones taking decisions about what happens in our life. And now, we realize it's not true. We do our best, but we're not in control. We're not the ones who decide what is going to happen, and we don't even know what's going to happen. So that's the main problem. We lose control, and our inner complication is projected outside, and it makes the interpretation worse. Instead of seeing facts as they are, we see them as puzzles trying to kill us or to steal our freedom. Okay. So I didn't speak about a solution yet. But the solution is not possible while those mental puzzles keep us outside ourselves. We have to go back in, embrace the fear. It is possible that this class will feel long for you because we will do the actual integration. Focus inside with an emotional integration attitude. When I'm afraid because the situation is complicated, the wave, the emotional wave of fear is what matters. Let's take a moment to feel what makes us lose peace. If I gave a class on my opinion of the COVID situation, you would still be trusting an outside source of information. Just because for some of you I have credibility, you would build false security about my opinion because Maha said so. I'd rather you stay lost in your puzzles and have no choice to feel losing control. This is how you see when you have faith and when you don't have it. When I tell you my opinions of COVID at the end of this class, your fears will rise again anyway. I just realized that was not comforting at all. Okay. Losing control. We feel that control was outside. I control what is happening. So losing control is losing something outside. So your intellect stays focused on that thing outside. While you do some integration, your mind will be tempted to go back outside about the current situation, about interpretations of what the facts could be if, and it's complicated. Go back to the feeling. I don't control what is going on during this puzzle, COVID crisis or personal life story. I'm lost. Anything could happen to me. I'm afraid. And it all comes down to, am I going to be stuck alone if my partner leaves me? Am I going to be stuck alone if I lose my job? Am I going to be stuck alone if the COVID isolation continues? Losing control, fear, abandonment. I know some of you are okay with many of those things. Focus on what rises for you. And use it to see how you are when a scenario happens. When puzzle scenario happens. The wave of complication comes from inside. It's all these potentials that want to not be felt. And you invent things in your head. You will invent facts rather than feel what wants to be felt. Well, actually, the potentials don't want to be felt until they're open. It's denial. Okay. So focus on the emotions, the feelings. This happens many times in our lives. Once a year, twice a year, depending on how complicated you are. And once per decade is a completely insane, dramatic scenario. But once in a while, a little puzzle rises. before we move on to the solutions, we have to look and feel the forces that are in denial. We feel like we are a victim of that outside treachery. Like if it was complotting against us, like life is, people are complotting, conspiring against me. Maybe they actually are. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not, but maybe it's true that they are. What is that fear? That abandonment. When people talk in your back. That loss of control. It's not just curiosity when we need to know the truth. I'm curious about the current COVID situation. So I would like to have information. But sometimes it's not curiosity. What makes you need to obtain the truth is to recuperate the sense of, now I control. Because I know the facts, so I can take decisions. So, as long as you have not tasted profoundly mourning control, letting it go, that control still wants facts to be able to take actual decisions. It's not curiosity that makes you want to know that kind of truth. It's your false sense of control that wants to come back in charge. It's never going to happen. So let yourself lose control. Make peace with not knowing the facts. Actually, it's just not knowing the facts about the outside puzzle. The facts that matter is you currently have a place to stay. That might change, but for now, hopefully, you have a place to stay. And if you don't, you just resolve that before resolving the COVID crisis. You resolve that. Resolve your immediate needs. That's the basic things. This force inside you, pulling you into the conspiracies, the scenarios. It is pulling you away from simply being here. And it's okay. I'm not immune to that, by the way. It was not dramatic. But I was not impartial. When last week, the information is Canadians can start traveling the 21st of July, to we're gonna stop saying dates because we just never know. But you can't until we say otherwise. That information was disappointing. I had, like anyone, some attachment. But it was not dramatic, of course. So, okay. I guess I'm a monk now, like most people on the planet. I talk about my friends online, which includes God. This is my Wi-Fi antennas. Hey God, peace. I was happy to see that I'm not panicking. But I understand that some of you are still panicking. So it's important to speak about when scenarios happen, whatever scenario is. Conspiracies, planetary or 3 people at work. The loss of control. The fear of being left out. Fear and abandonment. And we lose sight of what really matters. I'm alive. I have this current state of health, whatever that is. I have access to food. This is what's going on now, and it's reality. We're doing an integration now, so there are long periods of just being there. In the disappointment, in the loss. Faith is the next step. As long as you can't find yourself, it's going to be difficult. In the turbulence of these masks playing around, the victim, control, which is lost, fear and abandonment, somewhere inside there, if you take time, there's this place that says, but I'm alive. I'm alive. That counts for something. I'm alive. That counts. Amongst all the terrible facts that swirl around me, I'm alive. That fact should count, right? There can still be turbulence inside and outside you. But you can focus on this. I'm alive. And there's a space of peace amongst a lot of area that is not at peace. Somewhere a possibility of peace happens. So now you move to that. I'm alive. Physically, I'm alive. Emotionally, I'm aware. I'm alive emotionally. I'm aware. I feel. I'm present. It counts. That counts. Half an hour, that's good. After half an hour of giving ourselves the chance to feel the trouble that makes us lose sight of what is important, now we can focus. We've got rid of some trash. We've gained access to something deeper. I'm alive. It matters. That matters. It's an undeniable fact. It has some importance. More than anything else, actually. It has importance. I'm alive. Somewhere it brings a possibility of faith. Instead of convincing myself high in my mind, it's all going to be fine. There's a chance that we will all be fine. There's a chance that we won't. But I'm alive. And faith is not about lying to ourselves. It's to know we will go through it. It's another experience that we will go through. I can make this. I have faith. I'm going to go through this. When people gossip around you, when the world seems to plan against us, deep inside this turmoil, I am alive. And whatever will come, I'll go through it as another experience of life. I can make it. It also becomes hope. Faith and hope, they go hand in hand. Hope is factual and, I can make this, and faith is this greater power that I can count on. I'm alive. I'm gonna make it. And if death is what is waiting for me, that too is a dream. Death doesn't wait for anyone. It's unavoidable. One day we will die. Hopefully it's not next week. You understand? This fear of an impending worst case scenario could be old age when you reach 90 years old. This fear of death we have, we're like teenagers that think, that will never happen. It's so far, it's never going to happen. When there's events in your life that you had never expected to happen, whatever event, before you were stolen something, It's not an experience you had. You're not prudent that much. You just think, it's never going to happen. And then you get stolen something. My God, that's actually a real thing. That's how we are with death. Until we die, we never experienced it. So we think, it's never going to happen. But obviously it will at one point. So what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is that you would die. And that you would suffer before you do. That fear that death could happen next month or next year, it's based on that, in a sense. Being naive. It's never going to happen. That will never happen. Like if you have considered that to be a dream that happens to others, but not to me, you know. Until you have pondered the reality of death, you're in a false hope. It's just never gonna happen. That's why it freaks you out when a global conspiracy or a local conspiracy could affect you dramatically. I know we just touched a bit of peace and hope, and I'm alive. But we're moving into death as a possible thing. Usually, and that's the most probable scenario. It's very far in the future for most of us. It's going to be of old age, and there will be suffering before it happens. That's the most likely scenario. Let's take a moment to accept this. To see that we are naive. Like someone who never went through a heartbreak, thinking that we will always be in love. That's never gonna happen to me. My partner's awesome. And then the heartbreaks happens, one after another, over the decades. At one point you finally accept it's a possibility. Because once you accept the possibility of a heartbreak, then you stop being afraid of the heartbreak. And with your current partner, you enjoy the present moment. Like, at least now something good is happening. Do this with death. It's harder because we don't die multiple times to give ourselves a chance to accept it. There's no way to know how it will feel when it happens, except, by supernatural means. Accepting death as something that will happen eventually. Once you reach this point of acceptance, not to become suicidal. Oh no, do not be negative about this. If you have thoughts, well, that's going to happen, might as well be now. No, there's something wrong inside. Okay, keep working on it. That's not But it's thoughts that can happen. Yes, we're human. Okay, in the process of acceptance of that, negativity will happen. Yeah. Focus on this. Death will not point itself in my life like a heartbreak to give me a chance to accept it. So I have to accept it and also rejoice of being alive now. From a point of view, and that's only when you've done the work, there's no time to do that now. From a point of view that death is something that will happen. There is less panic from losing control. Because ultimately it's dying that we fear the most. It is the most unknown parameter. It could hurt a bit or a whole lot before death takes us. That is the worst case scenario and the most unavoidable scenario. When you think about the worst thing that could happen in your life, and you think the worst thing could happen probably won't happen, that's a lie. For any living being, the worst possible thing that can happen to you is the only thing that you are absolutely certain will happen eventually. There is no way out. And even those who experience extended lifespans through supernatural means have to go through it before the extension of life. This naivety, the worst thing that could happen to me, I hope will never happen. So naive. The worst possible scenario is the one thing you can be sure will happen. And the most probable way it's going to hurt a lot before. So that security that you were looking for, that fear of suffering, you are lying to yourself. Naive. You're not ready for what life has to bring you. If you live it with that fear of death. The inevitable, painful death next week, next year, or in 60 years from now, or even later. Contemplate it. That is the force inside that makes you go so complicated outside. It makes you lose peace. It makes you fear abandonment. It makes you feel like a victim because you absolutely will be submitted to it. Because you don't have a choice if that is going to happen or never. That is certainly one thing we do not control. fear, abandonment, victim control. Once you will have accepted a long, painful death as the highest probable thing that will happen eventually. How dramatic is a little lie in your back? How dramatic if there's no toilet paper for a few weeks? It resets your threshold of tolerance towards complications. Let's contemplate ourselves in the possibility of physical and emotional pain for at least a few weeks before the moment of our death. Contemplate the possibility. Not in a manifesting way, don't worry, you're not going to manifest it. In a way of that is what we fear. And our body is so stressed about it. Contemplate weeks of suffering before death. And then the body will die and it will decay and rot in the earth. Or be burned in one shot, doesn't matter once you're dead. The body's fear of ceasing to exist when it is unavoidable anyway. One day. That power prevents us from feeling gratitude of being alive right now. So before we go back to gratitude, let's be humble. We fear death so much. No wonder the conspiracies are complicated. No wonder. Because you have forgotten that the worst case scenario is worse than any puzzle in your life story. That will be the integration to contemplate. Make peace with the choices that nature made when it created you. It will destroy you. When nature created you, it already chose that it would destroy you in some way. It is nature's choice. Contemplate it until you see that it is a beautiful thing. Until you mourn yourself, your physical existence. It is a sad integration. It's not something you jump into gratitude so fast. Do it correctly. That's the answer to the question, what do you think about the COVID conspiracy? The answer is, whatever you fear about any scenario, any puzzle that your mind is conceiving, You fear that because you don't realize the worst case scenario is so much more terrible. And it holds the secret of what is beautiful in life. I'm alive now. That counts. That matters. If you're not an expert of emotional integration, do a contemplation of death for 10-20 minutes. And then stop and entertain yourself with something for more than 10-20 minutes. If you're well acquainted with emotional integration, do that contemplation for 1 hour. And then go entertain yourself. Something fun. Food you like, an activity you enjoy for more than an hour. More than that contemplation. And if you want to be like Shivagam, insanely wise, you will contemplate the demon Mara, which is what I just showed you about. The unavoidable destruction of death. You'll contemplate the demon Mara for 6 hours in a row. You'll just sit inside it and let it assault you. And through that you will find your faith. Only if you're an expert do that. This is how to achieve greatness in spirituality and personal growth. Face the one lesson that surpasses any other lesson. One thing at a time. And remember, at the end of any of those intense contemplation, I'm alive right now. That counts. That's important. Enjoy the day. Rejoice of being alive. Embrace the facts that you are fed, that you have shelter, another nice class. Yeah. Peace, guys.